Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have The Beach Boys, the brand new documentary from Disney. It is not the first, and certainly probably won't be the last documentary based on the Beach Boys, but this is brand new, 2024, just premiered today. In fact, in connection with Brian Wilson, I watched it in bed. I did not get out for the entire 2 hours. It's an hour and 53 minutes long, and fans of the Beach Boys will understand the not wanting to get out of bed reference. So, and as I learned, for very good reason as to why he didn't want to get out of bed for a considerably long time. Brian Wilson, if you didn't already know, is one of the core members of the Beach Boys. He is often considered a genius, a musical genius, to a degree that, I don't think people properly understood at the time, as I discovered watching this. They're a bit before my time, but of course I kind of grew up with Kokomo, when I was a kid. That was on loop constantly on the radio, and very often is the go-to for a modern Beach Boys song. Not my favorite by any means, but speaking of which, as that song is playing over the credits at the end, they do give a shout out for Jimmy. And considering Kokomo, I'm kind of thinking it might have been due to the late great Jimmy Buffett. That might have been a shout out to I'm pretty sure that's their friend. They don't mention Jimmy Buffett at all in the documentary, which I don't know, but it seemed right. Frank Marshall and let's see, I'm in the wrong spot here. Frank Marshall directed this along with one other. Why do you hide the name? It's Tom Zimney. Frank Marshall directed this. You'll recognize him from a bunch of other films as well. But this is very much focused on the Beach Boys, their rise and fall and rise again, and their place in history. You could very much say that not only if the Beach Boys didn't exist, I'm almost thinking that the Beatles in their, I know there's already big arguments about this, but the Beatles wouldn't be where they were at the end of their career, the latter part of their career, if it wasn't for the Beach Boys. They were set up as rivals at the time. Beach Boys came along first, and again, just be very clear, I am not an expert in either of these bands. I enjoy both of them, and there is probably people out there who might be watching this that have 1,000 times more knowledge on the Beach Boys and the Beatles and all forms of rock and roll, especially throughout the 60s, than I or this documentary shares. Just, that's understood. So I'm only imparting what I learned from watching this and what I enjoyed or didn't from this. So comment freely, but if I say somebody's name wrong, don't get too upset. The Beach Boys are a quintessential California band, if not the quintessential California band, created right here in Los Angeles and Hawthorne, California, not too far from where I am at the moment. But most of them didn't surf, despite the fact that they leaned very hard into the surf rock movement, almost combining the Dick Dale and all that instrumental guitar rock with the harmonies of the Four Freshmen, I believe, things like that. Their inspirations are all over this very, very early on, and they were teenagers. Their youngest, who came in, where's his name? I gotta find it here. Come on. Why are you hiding? Why are you deep burying him? Mike Dean? Mike? He was 13 at the time. He was only in the band for a short time, and there has been a core group of Beach Boys in this band it's Brian Wilson, Dennis and Carl, the brothers, and then cousin Mike Love. There's Al Jardine, of course. He was the lead singer, considered the lead singer, because he did a lot of the less harmonic lead vocals, and of course Bruce Johnson is one of the more longer lasting. Glenn Campbell was in the band for a time. I did not know that. Yeah, I'm dumb. No, I just wasn't around. I didn't know the details of the Beach Boys, so we could live with that. But it deals with a lot of the growth, the evolution of the band, and their music, and their reliance upon family. Family, especially since they were all brothers and a cousin for the most part, and with a few others joining in here or there. But there was very much a family band, and it's under their management of their father Murray, took them to considerable levels of fame that most that kids their age would have never imagined. It literally, somebody pressing a record and then having it end up on a radio station in LA, and suddenly it becomes the most requested song, possibly due to the family calling in requesting it. They have a large family, as they note in this. But it's still, the idea is that it got heard by thousands of people in LA, and soon they were bigger than anything. And it's not even just that, surfing was a big thing, but not necessarily in Oklahoma, not necessarily in Chicago. There's not a whole lot of surfing going on there. But as Don was a producer that I don't know his entire catalog. But as a number of people noted in this, is like, no matter where you were in the country or the world, it made you feel like you were in Southern California. Summer, bikinis, surfboards, all that stuff. Even if you were in the dead of winter in Middle America, it literally brought it to life. And one of the things I realized from this, and I think a lot of people did as well in relating their experience with the Beach Boys, is that while I know there's a lot of Beatles cover bands that can certainly do. By the way, when you see a Beatles cover band, you will notice that they usually do a lot of the old Matching Suits era, Ed Sullivan Show era songs. You're not necessarily getting a lot of the later, after Sergeant Pepper. You don't usually get stuff Sergeant Pepper later, for the most part. You get a lot of the early stuff. It's because some of the later stuff the Beatles couldn't even do live. So imagine if you're the Beach Boys with these incredibly self-crafted harmonies. There's not a ton of cover bands out there that are just, let's do a Beach Boys cover band. I'm sure they exist, but to reach the level of perfection that Brian and the gang, the brothers and the cousin, and Al created, is on another planet. That's to their credit, because it's, as much as they evolved over the years and turned into something that was mostly unrecognizable once they reached the 70s, especially. When it came back to just the endless summer of their youth, that's a reference to the re-release of their greatest hits, which brought them back into the forefront of music. It's seriously, you can't get people to sing harmonies like that today, or even back in probably the 60s, 70s, 80s. I know that, yeah, like I said, there's probably people who've done lots of cover bands of them, but I can't imagine they're good. maybe you are. Maybe you're watching this and you're like, oh, I was in that band. I was in that cover band. We were awesome. Oh, that's fantastic. That's because, you know what, that takes a lot of talent. And there is probably no greater harmonic talent in rock and roll. Yes. You're going to say, well, the Beatles are really good too, but Paul and John especially, yeah. Yeah, but not on the level of the Beach Boys. When you realize how these songs were crafted by this sort of boy genius who never really learned music in a real sense, or orchestration or anything else. Working with, for the most time, while the rest of the band was out touring, Brian Wilson was back in the studio working with the Wrecking Crew, which is a deadly collection of top of the line, butt kicking studio musicians, people that at the top of their craft. Just, you bring those guys in to play on your album, you know you're going to get a great sound, even if your real bass player sucks. So you're going to get some great things. And Brian, working with the Wrecking Crew, formulated so many Beatles songs, while the real full band doing the rest of the harmonies and everything else would be out touring, going around different parts of the world. Brian, as they'll explain in this, was more of a homebody. And that is sort of a lot of us would say he was maybe autistic. I don't know if that's not a term that's used in this documentary at all. But he has this sort of genius element about him. And of course, it's a term that was never used in the 60s, 70s, even 80s, or 90s. Who knows when that thing started getting used. But it's still, it made us realize that he really didn't function well in certain social situations, especially touring constantly, having a nervous breakdown on the way to Houston, and just going, I can't go on with this. I need to be at home writing and creating music. Even though he was an instrumental part of the sound of the band, it's kind of an early glimpse of somebody in the spotlight having to deal with sort of a nature that prohibited them from interacting in the world in the same way as so much of us take for granted. This also, highlights, as I mentioned, the Beatles before. You kind of can't not mention the Beatles when it comes to the Beach Boys. When it comes to the almost manufactured rivalry, because who's number one this week? It's the Beach Boys came first, but the Beatles came across to the United States to play the Ed Sullivan Show. The Beach Boys were over in New Zealand. Like, where did these guys come from? They didn't even realize what was going on. So yeah, I realize I'm telling you pretty much all the highlight reels from this documentary. But I say, if you're a fan, yeah, you might have some problems with it, and you probably know a whole lot more of the details behind what's going on in these things. A lot of this is archival footage. Obviously, Dennis and why am I blanking? Carl. Dennis and Carl are no longer with us. We lost them in like 83 and 98. And of course, there is mention of the connection to my brain. I should have just stayed in bed. The killer killed Sharon Tate. Why? I'm going to say it at the wrong time. Yeah, so there's all that tension. See, this is no edits. So you're going to get this half-baked kind of thing that literally, I crawled out of bed, I got a shower, and I stood in front of this camera just for you, just to mess this up. And by the way, using the word mess, I was tempted to use another word. Well, they do not censor this. So this is uncensored. If you've seen some of these interviews before, which many of you probably have, they're just arranged in a different way. Yes, chronologically, over time, showing how their evolution happened. But a lot of this stuff, you get to see a sort of first and second take on somebody's use of a word other than mess, getting messed up. And so, yeah, they do not bleep this, just so you know, if you are adverse to strong language and you want to share this with the kids, well, they're going to hear some words. So, not a lot, not consistent, but here and there. Some people are sensitive to that, so I'm going to tell you. So, I want to make sure that this doesn't run out, because I was setting this up earlier, as I was drying off. So, Charles Manson, that's the name I wanted to say. Charles Manson. Do I just need to look at the floor? I don't know. Hell. Charles Manson was at one point involved in their story, tangentially, but yeah. This is you'll. I think a lot of you will. It's honestly, this is a nostalgia kick. I love behind the scenes stories of musicians, and I know I've known a lot of musicians over my life, and I've seen a lot of them grow, and some of them devolve, and some of them become pretty big deals, and some of them just sort of go their separate ways, and some of them just keep trucking on, big or small. They just love playing the music, and sometimes fame tends to sometimes take away that spirit. I don't doubt that to a certain degree, a form of the Beach Boys would be performing today if they never became that big. If they probably just keep trucking along, creating new harmonies, new sounds. And by the way, speaking of sounds, Pet Sounds is my favorite of their albums. I know that's not a really big surprise for a lot of people. But yeah, it's God only knows. It's near perfection. And it makes a neat little note at the end of the film that 34 years after it was released and not really embraced or even paid attention to in the U.S. market or the Capitol Records. Was it still Capitol Records at that point? Capitol Records didn't even promote it in the U.S. UK got it. They loved it. U.S., they were like, here's the greatest hits. Just listen to that old stuff. It's we eventually got Pet Sounds, and it eventually, in the year 2000, 34 years after its release, got a gold record, and then 2 weeks after that became platinum. Something happened in 2000. I can't remember what. Was it Kokomo? I have no idea. But it shows, this documentary definitely shows their enduring appeal, their humble origins, and the eventual thing that they don't go into great detail as to what really built up between them to push them apart. Beyond Murray. Thanks, Murray. You're not going to diss somebody's dead dad, but yeah, let's just say Murray hurt them in a astounding way, and it's really sad for them that it went the way it did. But hey, they persevered, and you might have, if you're in the right place, the right beach in California at some point not too long ago, possibly last year, you might have seen a few boys on the beach. I don't know. All I can say is, yes, definitely worth watching. Again, even if you know everything about the Beach Boys, just a good nostalgia trip. And there might be some new footage here. I do not know. I have not seen all the documentaries or anything else. I don't think I've ever seen any documentary about the Beach Boys. But for those who love it, you can't miss it. It's just another step. And you can just yell at TV at what they got wrong if you want. It's just the way it goes. Tomorrow's episode is number 134, as I mistakenly picked. And 134 is... Oh, come back. It was there. I just tried to zoom in, and it crashed on me. This is an older tablet. 134? Is that what it was? Yeah. I've already moved it over. It is Kazazimoto Generation Fire. What is that? Well, it's an animated anthology series. I did check it out to see what it was all about, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow next. Kazazimoto? Yeah, Kazazimoto Generation Fire on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.